Welcome to EFT Nation, your home for all things tapping. For show notes and resources, please visit EFTtappingtraining.com. We are your tapping hosts. I'm Alina Frank.
And I'm Craig Wiener. The information provided in this podcast is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information presented here is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but are not guarantees of any kind.
All right, today I thought we would have a conversation about boundaries because it really does show up so much in EFT sessions in many different ways, and it really is quite important. And when I was exploring this, I suddenly remembered the last episode of that show that we watched, Transparent.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah, the actress Judith Light's character, Shelley, is singing to her adult children this really funny song. Go check it out on YouTube. Look at the lyrics, and the song is called Your Boundary is My Trigger.
I love that.
Yeah.
What a great title.
Yeah.
Your Boundary is My Trigger.
So you could just see like this very stereotypical Jewish mother talking to her daughter, Sarah, and her daughter is saying, you know, Mom, I need to tell you something, but you need to promise you're not going to make a face, you're not going to judge, you're not going to interrupt me, you're just going to listen. And then, and I have boundaries and I never knew I had them, and I'm a true codependent. I'm trying to make everybody happy first instead of myself. And I'd like for you to speak to me respectfully. You know, my dad just died and I need you to be respectful when you're talking about him. And
what's her response to that? Like, yes,
please.
dear.
Okay, I'll never talk about anything ever again. I will never have an opinion around you again. Are you happy now? You know what? Your boundary is my trigger. She goes on and on about how she sacrificed her body to have them and to give her, you know,
life to her children.
You know,
all she's
after
ever done
all
is
I've
for
done
them.
for you. You know, you could just see that, and it's really funny, but. It's funny because, you know, we do know people like that. We've encountered people like that, and maybe we've been in situations where we haven't had really strong boundaries. And like I said, it's important because it shows up often enough in EFT sessions, but
Absolutely.
It really is crucial. Having healthy boundaries and maintaining them are really crucial to enhancing quality of life. And there are a number of studies about that.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about how it shows up with my clients, is one is they never really learned how to.
Right.
Right? There were no examples in their, I can speak from personal experience, of not having been taught how to have a boundary, how to establish a boundary, that you deserve a boundary, that you should have boundary, that boundaries are respectful. You know, thinking about bathroom doors that didn't even have locks on them, physical boundaries when I grew up.
Right.
But so that's one thing. And then I just see the challenges of when people feel the need to set a boundary, and it's a weak muscle, or somebody reacts to it, or their fear of setting a boundary because somebody's going to respond and get angry or be sensitive to it. So it becomes this skill that is so critically important, and people inherently want and need, but have so many challenges being able to establish or put in place.
Yeah. So let's talk about all the different ways that it shows up and how EFT can help with this.
Okay.
So one is like for your own personal well-being.
Absolutely.
You know, it helps you to prioritize your own needs and your well-being. It allows you to establish limits around your time, your energy, your resources, and it really prevents you from becoming overwhelmed, exhausted, and burnt out. And by really getting clear and defining what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in your relationships, work, personal life, you know, you can maintain a healthier balance and experience greater satisfaction in your life.
Right. And the part that I really like in that one is it doesn't necessarily have to do with other people.
Right.
Right? This is a boundary I'm setting for myself in my schedule with my work-life balance. It doesn't even have to involve the challenge of setting it without even the potential confrontation with other people or they'll be
Exactly.
upset with me.
Yep.
And setting those kinds of boundaries for myself is a huge one that shows up a lot with my EFT clients. You know, with especially health and well-being and exercise and
Right.
food and boundary of when I'm going to keep working or not keep working or go to bed or whatever it is. You
Right.
know.
All right, and another way that it will help you is to have a healthier relationship. Boundaries are really essential for establishing healthy and respectful relationships, and they can enable you to communicate your needs, your expectations, limits to others, and it fosters really clear and open communication. I know when I worked in the area of sex and intimacy, and I had clients that were considering, doing something outside what is conventional relationship. Let's say opening up their relationship and sexually, with having another person in their bedroom, or like having an open relationship. You absolutely had to have these very clear communication skills to really talk at length about what is acceptable, what isn't, what feels good to you, what doesn't. And that would really, really go a long way towards preventing all kinds of disasters.
And, and going back to the transparent, the ability to have boundaries to be able to speak them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a huge tappable issue
Yeah.
for just being able to say, these are my needs, this is okay, this isn't okay. I would appreciate it if you could respect this boundary. Especially in personal relationships,
Yep.
but also work relationships,
Yep.
not just primary relationships.
Yeah, I see it as really by setting up clear boundaries, you can actually protect yourself from being in and continuing to be in a toxic or abusive relationship. It's actually like a warning sign when someone can't hold your boundaries, right?
Right.
It helps you to maintain autonomy, and it preserves your personal values. Boundaries also help define the level of closeness and intimacy that one has, and by allowing, more fulfilling and balanced relationships, you need them.
The greatest metaphor that I used for boundaries was the childhood studies where
Oh, yeah.
where they would take small children,
Yep.
let's just say out of a nursery school, and put them on the back porch
With their
let's say the building,
caregivers, yeah.
with the caregivers, and that one property was fenced in,
Right.
and another one wasn't.
Right.
So when they would put a boundary of a fenced in area, the children would stray much farther away from the back door,
Right.
because it would enhance a feeling of safety of having that boundary, and they'd be freer to explore. But when there was no fence and no boundary back there was a less safety, and they would stay much closer to their caregivers, much closer to the back door. So actually having that boundary increase the sense of freedom.
Exactly.
Which on one hand feels like it doesn't make sense.
I
but
know
it makes
it totally
perfect sense.
totally feels counterintuitive, but then when you think about safety and how we're hardwired for that, it makes perfect sense. All right, so you need it for emotional and mental well-being. Boundaries contribute to your sense of like health and safety, give you a sense of safety, of control, of predictability, and therefore it really reduces stress and anxiety. Clear boundaries allow you to protect yourself from emotional manipulation, excessive demands, invasive behaviors that could negatively impact your mental health. Boundaries also help maintain a healthy work-life balance. It's important for self-care to have them.
Yes, I agree with that one.
All right. And then last here is no, there's a couple more. One is that you have more self-respect and self-esteem when you're able to establish and enforce personal boundaries. You're really demonstrating self-respect and reinforces your self-esteem, and it shows you your needs are valuable, that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And by setting them and making clear boundaries, you can assert autonomy, establish a stronger sense of self and identity. Right?
I can absolutely identify, I think probably most of our listeners can as well, is that when they did stretch and they set a healthy, appropriate boundary, that was good for themselves. And then they put into place, they voiced it, they held it, even despite a challenge. Boy, the self-respect and self-esteem that grows from being able to hold that
Right.
is really just a huge pillar of self-growth and development, to be able to hold a boundary, despite maybe some resistance or questioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really a great sign of progress.
Now, this is one that comes up not only with your EFT clients, but I see it with our business program where we help EFT practitioners thrive in business, and also for those students going through certification with us. We see this. Boundaries are important for productivity and achieving your goals. They actually help you to maintain focus, and by setting limits on distractions, interruptions, time commitments, you can allocate more time and energy more efficiently towards your priorities, towards your goals, and boundaries help you to avoid spreading yourself too thin or becoming overwhelmed with excessive demands, and allowing you to achieve a better work-life integration and accomplishing your objectives effectively. I'm thinking of people that are going through those programs that have families, being clear with a partner about, can you do this for me so that I can get work done? Or, yeah, just a number of those things where, like, maybe it's never been an issue and suddenly you really want to achieve this goal. Then it becomes important to tell your children and, maybe your partner, about those kinds of things. Or I have known EFT practitioners that finally had the conversation with their day job boss. Look, I'm really wanting to get this certification. It's going to help me be a better person at work. Who knows, maybe I can include this in the work that I do here. And once they finally get over their fear and everything and are able to have that conversation, their boss has been really supportive and maybe even given them, time to go and do the things that are necessary for achieving their certification, etc.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a client that was a boss of a company.
Yeah.
But was like always on call for their employees, promising
Right.
questions.
Right.
And and just felt like they had to be in order to be a good administrator and boss.
Right.
And realizing that they weren't able to get all the things that they needed to get done, and were stressed and overworked. And so being able to tap on first before they established a time of day. Okay.
Right.
So you can call me any day between 2 to 3 with questions.
Right. That's
Right.
great.
And so we created a time window that they were just available for their employees, as opposed to anytime 24/7. And it ended up working fabulously well for everybody, because they
Right.
knew they could get a hold of them directly. This person knew that during that time they could devote in their schedule, but not have their whole day,
Right.
ready
That's
for
great.
anything that came in. So that was a big
Yeah.
one.
Here's one that we really don't talk about too often. It might not be as obvious, but when you are you've got strong boundaries, you're articulating your boundaries, you're setting your boundaries, you're maintaining your boundaries, you are actually modeling what self-respect is for others.
I talk about this all the time. I think it's so important, because if you didn't ever have somebody that would show you in integrity,
Yeah.
in a heartfelt way, what a clean boundary was, you don't even think that they exist. They look like
Yeah.
they're mean and they're authoritarian and vindictive and having to have it their way. But by modeling that,
Yep.
this might be the first time that they ever got to experience on that side what it's
Exactly.
like for somebody to set up a boundary in a good way, which then enables them the possibility that maybe they can do it themselves.
Yep. So really, by establishing and adhering to your boundaries, you encourage others to do the same. And, mutual respect for boundaries leads to healthier, more balanced interactions. It really helps to foster harmonious relationships, and contributes to like a positive social environment, whether at work or home or church or wherever. So let's talk about all the ways that EFT can help you when it comes to creating and maintaining healthy boundaries.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it can help you first to find and then work on and correct and shift some of the negative limiting beliefs that you might have
Oh,
that are at the
yeah.
root of your inability
Oh,
to set
yeah.
them.
For sure. Like,
Okay. So, for example, if my belief is, well, if I ask for what I need, I won't get it.
yep.
Or if I ask for what I really want or need, that I'll be rejected because I asked for it.
Right.
Right?
Or abandoned.
They'll abandon me if
Right.
I really ask for what I need. Or I have to take care of others in
Right.
order for me to be loved or in order for me to be accepted. So I have to sacrifice my needs and my wants and my desires for others because that's what it means to be a good person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you can start to tune into how you feel about a certain situation or a person using EFT, and then you begin to become more self-aware, and you end up being more in alignment with your really true authentic self and discover what your limits are. So this is for people that were raised in certain conditions where they didn't have like this muscle of what is a boundary and is it okay for me to set that. The more that you tap, the more that you tune in, the more you're really tuning into specific situations or people, you really do become more self-aware, and then you're able to articulate your boundaries. So and even find out what they are. So that's a great use of EFT.
What about, okay, how about if you imagine?
Yeah.
You use your imagination going forward.
Yep.
And then tapping on your fears about what you want to say to somebody.
Oh yeah, rehearsing and tapping.
How in your mind they're going to respond, or how you know they're going to respond, or
Right.
how you fear they're going to respond and react.
Yes.
That you can become more assertive. You can reduce your anxiety. You can improve your interpersonal interactions by, like you said, okay, so I'm picturing the scene that I ask for the day off, that I ask for some time, some me time, whatever that is, and you imagine them saying whatever you imagine, right? How does that make me feel?
Right.
Well, it makes me feel fear. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel worried. It makes me feel angry. And tapping on all those varieties of emotions that show up by pre-rehearsing. And then when we actually do it in real life, they're like,
Oh, whatever.
well, okay. And you're like, wow, this stuff's magic.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So you can also tap on any steps that you have in order to maintain a boundary. For example, say you've told your boss that you really need to be home by 6 p.m. every day. And then your boss suddenly tells you, like 1 week into you trying to maintain these boundaries, oh, please, I need you, one night. It's all. So you can tap first and see, do I need to negotiate this? Is this a boundary that I can
Be flexible
be
with
flexible
or not?
on? Do I really need to stand firm with this? Is it, my sick son is at home and I need to get home? All of those things help you to kind of like navigate and split apart like your emotional reactivity around it.
Exactly.
And then be able to, make a clear decision about which way to go.
As opposed to flying off the handle when they ask me.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Or automatically going into the mode of what you were doing before. Yes, of course.
Okay, well, if you
yeah.
really need me, then I'll do it again. Right. So, yeah. So, in other words, when you do your own work,
Yeah.
or you work with a swap partner,
Yeah.
or you hire an EFT practitioner,
Yeah.
with that, especially working with another, then you can start to work on not just that future imagined scenario, for example,
Sure.
but you can start to go back in time to those
yeah.
childhood adverse, negative, or traumatic experiences
Yep.
that
Led
established that
yeah,
pattern
yeah.
that made me wire in that I have to sacrifice my own needs, that I have to give in and take care of others, so that I can start to release, the roots. It's like, plucking off gardening yesterday, right? And just like pulling those weeds, and some of them just snap off at the top. And it's like there's a little bit of satisfaction
Sure.
that I don't see all those leaves above the soil.
Sure.
But part of me knows that root is still there, and give it another 2 weeks. And
Yeah,
it's going to be
yeah.
popping up again. So how do we get to the roots of where these
Exactly.
problems started?
Exactly.
And using a practitioner can be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there are absolutely situations that really contribute to lack of boundaries. Some of that is there wasn't the intention to not have boundaries, but it just so happened because of it's a natural extension. I'm thinking about like having an addict for a parent, or a parent who's alcoholic. That's a natural situation where your boundaries are you just don't have very clear boundaries being modeled to you, and you're also caretaking a lot. So in those situations, I'm also thinking about like being raised with religious trauma, with like a fundamentalist background, where it's part of the mix is to have you weaken your boundaries. They condition you or groom you into not having boundaries so that they can manipulate you and control you and that sort of thing. Being raised in a cult is another example, right?
Well, I mean, simply parents without boundaries,
Yeah,
that were modeled by their parents,
for sure.
no boundaries,
For
and
sure.
continue the pattern, and therefore you pick up the same mirroring pattern as well. It's just, ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. Great conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us today at EFT Nation. And remember that you can find show notes and previous episodes at EFTtappingtraining.com.